They are so sweet. So here we are. I'm eating one too, so I just, my mouth is full. Here we are with our fignitary. That's what I'm calling you now. Our fignitary, Chester Lynn. He's an Ocracoke native. He's been growing things all his life, but he especially loves to grow and talk about figs and fig trees. And he's going to tell you a little bit about this particular fig tree. I'm going to pan out this way for just a second to show you that we are at the back deck of the OPS Museum. So there's the museum building. And here is this fig tree. It is huge and it is heavily laden. And what kind of fig tree is it?
It is what the old people on Ocracoke called a sugar fig.
A sugar fig.
Which, not a celeste, it's a sugar fig.
Okay.
And it is a small fig, and they're real sweet. And they've been on Ocracoke a long time.
Okay.
It's one of probably 3 to maybe 4 that's been on Ocracoke at least a couple of 100 years.
Wow. Okay.
And this one is doing real good. It's nestled in between 2 buildings, so
right,
it's sort of in the lee
storage
out of the
building.
wind, and it is covered full of figs, and whatever it do, it likes where it's at, so we don't argue about it, and it's doing wonderful.
That's right. We don't try to change anything.
No. It's the birds like it too, and we got to feed a few of them too, so we don't hurt them, you know.
And it's like a little sugar bomb.
The figs are real sweet, and there weren't never a lot of this tree propagated on the island, because there was, as far as preserving it, you took so many of them to make a peck, and the older people really used some of the bigger figs for pecks of figs.
Oh, I see.
And they're little figs like this, they get in cereal and things like that they would eat them, cut them up and
just eat them fresh.
Yes, eat them in cereal and things like that, you know.
Okay, I like to eat them right off the tree, like we just did.
When I was growing up, a small boy, the yard that this tree came from was down the road from my house on the way to the community store. And I had went to the community store after something, after some groceries or something. And I was a small boy, but I was walking home, and they had been in the yard and cleaned around the fig trees and cleaned them all out. In the yard, it had a lot of fig trees. And there was a truck hauling the limbs away, and a piece fell on the side of the road, and it had a root on it, and I could look at it, but it didn't have leaves on it. It was dead of winter, but I could tell that it was a fig tree by the bark and all. And so I grabbed it, threw it in the yard. A month later, I went out and planted it, and it sprouted and grew, and I've passed it and given it all right. This particular tree is a piece of it, and this past year, mine got cut down after the hurricane because of the people that were there that was trying to help. They actually cut it down and almost killed it. And so I'm going to plant me a new one eventually back in the same spot.
You can take a cutting off of this one.
I'll get a cutting back of this one.
Right. So how do you propagate a cutting? You just stick it in dirt?
You in the spring of the year, early in the spring of the year, before it starts to fold, you have to get foliage. You cut it, you put it in dirt, but you cut it and you put it in real light and airy soil. But you need to make sure that, like where the leaves are, make sure that it's in the ground, in the pot, some good depth. And then you have to keep it real damp. You can't let that soil dry at all.
Okay.
It's got to stay damp all the time, because those little white tender roots will start, and you've got to keep it damp to keep those little tender roots going.
Sure.
And if they dry, it's gone,
Yeah, right.
And so you keep it going, and you may lose a few, but I do so many of them, so it don't matter. But they the fig tree roots real good, and they do so good on Ocracoke because the soil is light and airy, it's sandy soil, and they don't like clay, heavy soil, and all the soil is light and airy, and then they like the salt. Now, too much or anything, and there's some fig trees on the island, being since this past year, we had in September, there's some that are hurt bad because the root system, it hurt the root system. Some will may make it come back, some won't because it's hurt the root system too bad. And that's what's happened. You know, I know a guy friend of mine got 3 big fig trees, and they hurt real bad this year. And I don't know that they'll come back.
My fig tree looks green and happy and has lots of new growth on it, but it's just not producing much.
That can happen. That can happen. There's several things that in the process of around February, I suggest try to get you a fertilizer. I forget get some blooming fertilizer like you put around roses and all that, and put around the fig tree, because actually the figs is the flower.
Right, they are, yes.
They're
like an inside-out flower. When you open them, you see
it does not have a bloom on it.
Right.
Ahead of that fig, you know, and that fig can show up before the foliage shows up.
Yes. Right.
You can tell what's going to happen, and usually that's the first crop. And some fig trees have. Usually this sugar fig only has 1 crop. The pound fig, which is my favorite, which is a big purple fig, that can have 3 crops.
Right. Yeah. But only one usually is the big one.
Yeah,
that's like my tree will have a little crop, a big crop, and then maybe a tiny crop after that.
The main crop will be in mid-August, and then you can have a crop in October.
Yeah.
But that usually is a smaller crop, but it can happen. Depends on the tree and how the tree's doing, and if the tree's growing good.
Should we pick one of these? Should we show someone the difference between an unripe fig? These green ones are not quite right. Can you reach a ripe one? There we go. Look at that beauty. Nice and mushy. Oh, there's how it looks on the inside. All sweet and delicious, yeah.
Yeah, and you do not worry about the peeling. The good Lord took care of that.
That's right.
It ain't kill them birds.
Yep, eat it peel and all. Now some of them, the one that I have at my house has a real sticky sap at the end that if you get it on your lips, it kind of seems to stay there. But these don't. These aren't as sticky.
And sometimes when we were kids and we used to go pick figs, you had to take a bath after you pick figs, because the syrup gets on you and the syrup itches you.
Yes.
Itches, you know.
Yes, my arms will itch if I don't. I have to wash clear up to the elbow after I've been picking them. Yeah.
Because you get all that syrup, you know, and that is just part of the fig tree, you know.
Right. But that's not the part of the fig fruit. It's just right at the stem where you pull it off, where that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the syrup can come from broken limbs or broken leaves or any of that. It's a fig syrup, you know, that happens, you know.
Look how happy this fig tree is.
And it's in a wonderful condition.
It is.
And some of the limbs that lay on the ground, I've been here many times, and when they lay on the ground and dug them up and dug them up, and I don't. There's sometimes I've asked permission, and I'm bad about that. I don't really. It's almost my youngin', so I don't feel like I have to ask permission.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna put it here, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's not mine, but I almost feel like it's mine because it's my baby that I've tended to and nursed it and put fertilizer around it when it needed it, without you ever asking permission. You know? I've been told you had to ask permission when you have permission.
Well, I'll tell you, I came down here last week and ate a few off of this one. Now, normally when they would have the museum open, they pick the figs and have them there, and I think they charge like $1 for them for people to try, a little fundraiser for the museum. But this year, Andrea Powers, who is the executive director for OPS, is letting Trudy Austin and John Simpson pick them for their fig preserves because they put up a lot of preserves.
It is important that no fig tree, the figs rot on the tree. That is almost that to an old Ocracoke family. That's almost causing you to be a communist.
So it's an unforgivable sin,
That
is
is
what you're
almost,
saying?
That is almost unforgivable.
Okay.
To sit there and let them figs rot on a tree.
That's right.
They think, they look at you, they may not say it out publicly, but amongst themselves they'll say, "You've ever heard talk of that? The figs are rotted on the tree," and they'll think of you as almost evil, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because in Ocracoke history, that was an important part of the back history of this island. Is there weren't that many trees that produce fruit. Fig tree was one of them, and so you could share that with your neighbors, and it was an important part. At the dead of winter, you couldn't go to the store and get everything,
Right.
because they may not have it, but you could preserve enough figs that you had the jars, you know, and you could get in the dead of winter. And then now, like since the 60s, the fig cake got started, and now that's made Ocracoke famous. The whole Outer Banks uses it, but it is the fig cake recipe, the date cake recipe that came from Margaret Garish, and she changed the recipe and put some preserved figs in it, and the rest is history.
She changed the world, at least our small part of it.
And it is absolutely a wonderful cake.
It is.
And especially, I'm a traditional, I like the tradition, and it's a nice, moist, wonderful cake. If it's light and airy and dry, throw it away, because it ain't fit to eat.
Well, that's true. I love to make a fig cake, and I got my original recipe from Gaynell. Gaynell Tillett used to sell her fig cakes at the Fish House way back, and at the community store even back before that. And that's where I got the recipe from her. But it's the same basic
It's
traditional
the same
recipe.
All the old people, they had little things they did each, you know. Somebody may put a little bit more oil in the batter. They might put an egg or two more, or they might put a little bit more of a spice or something more than they did others, you know. And changed it a little tiny bit, but
Some people do walnuts, some people do pecans.
Yeah.
That'll make a difference in the taste.
and all those little
And the types of figs.
Yeah, huh?
The types of figs that in your preserves will change it a
Yeah,
little
I mean
bit
there's all kinds of little things like that people have done, and it's made it fun, you know. And some people, the big thing is, everybody thinks theirs is better than everybody else's, and most of the time it's the same, except for now when they do the fig cake cooking contest, you can tell that it is. Most of the time we can tell if it's fit to eat, you know.
Right, if it's fit to eat.